In this video, you're going to learn all about my super simple pad setup, why you might want to use it, and how you can implement it at your church. Coming up. Hey, Spencer here from leadingworshipwell.com, your daily dose of practical worship leading tips. This is the place where we talk about how to lead yourself well, lead your church well, and lead worship well. So if that's something you're interested in, you're in the right place. Click subscribe down below and let's get into it, because today we're talking all about a super simple pad setup that you can implement at your church. If you don't know what pads are yet, don't worry, I'll explain it here in a moment. If you do already know what pads are, then you can click the timestamp down in the description below, or just go to the timestamp on the screen right here, and that'll show you the setup that I want to show you in this video. But I want to know, are you using a pad setup at your church? And if you are, what does it consist of? Let me know in the comments below, and I'll talk to you in a second. Thanks for sharing your setup down below. I'm interested to see how people run pads. And so here's my answer to the question. Here's how I run pads. Now, before we get to that, maybe you're wondering what pads are, and pads are simply just some ambient sound that you play in the background. You'll hear it here in a second. You play it in the background and it kind of just fills in the sonic cracks of your music. So whenever you're just up there strumming with an acoustic guitar, even if you have a decent sized band, you probably aren't playing like every single second of your set. There isn't somebody playing all the time. And what pads do is they just drone in the key of whatever key you want them to be in, and they play consistently. So there's always this solid foundation of audio coming through that just really ties everything together. So you can hear it in the background right now as I'm talking. I want to show you an example though of what it sounds like in an actual worship leading environment or a song. So here are a few examples of what a song might sound like with pads and what a song might sound like without pads.
We're creation suddenly articulate, with 1,000 tongues to lift one cry. Then from north to south and east to west, we'd hear Christ be magnified.
So that's what pads sound like, and whenever you use that in a worship environment, it just kind of adds an extra dimension to what you're doing musically. So it's great if you have a small band, or if you're just leading with you and an acoustic guitar. That it works particularly well with that, which is why I use it right now, is because most of the time it's just me leading with an acoustic guitar. So if I'm just playing with my acoustic guitar, there's only two things happening. It's me singing and my acoustic guitar. But if I add in the pads, it's like this free instrument that I don't need anyone else to play. It just sits in the background and adds some body, as you heard in those examples. So that's why I use it, and it's super simple to set up. So why not use it? Try it at your church. I'll show you my setup right now. This is what my setup looks like. This is great if it's just you and an acoustic guitar, or you and a small band. Here's my setup. Here is my super simple pad setup. It's literally right at my feet as I'm leading. This is where I lead worship on Sunday. Got my microphone right here. This is just sitting here. I kind of moved it out this way a little bit. It's usually like sitting up in that corner up there. But this is all you need. There's three pieces. First of all, you need some sort of device to play the pads from. So I just have this super old tablet. It's like a Dell tablet that they probably don't even make anymore. It's basically a piece of garbage, but it's beautiful because I get to use it for my pads. And yeah, you don't need anything fancy. You could use your phone to play the pads. You could use an iPad. You could use a laptop, whatever. I try to keep things super portable though, so I don't use a laptop. I just have this tablet that is cheap. I don't need it. You could use like an Amazon, what is it? Those Amazon Fire tablets, that would probably work just fine. So just a quick rundown and then I'll go in depth. that is getting plugged into a volume pedal, which I'll explain why that's important here in a second. And then from the volume pedal, it just goes into a direct box over there. And that's it. So let me break down each piece one at a time here, and I'll talk a little bit more about it. All right, first things first is the tablet that I use to play the pads for the pads, and I'll link all of this stuff down in the description below with recommendations that I have. Like I said, there's not too much equipment, and you probably already have the equipment anyways, but I start off with this tablet, and I'm using, people always ask what I'm using to play the pads off of. I'm just using like the Google Play Music app or whatever it is. Use whatever app you want. There are two features though in an app that you probably want, which most will have. Number one is the ability to have the pad or the song or whatever repeat over and over again. So for example, I have this, I don't know if you can see it there in the bottom, whatever corner that is for you. It just repeats the same song over and over again, and that's because if the song reaches the ending of the pad of the audio file that you have, you don't want it to go into the next key. And so make sure that's clicked, make sure you have it set to repeat the same song so it only changes whenever you want it to. And then the other thing that might be helpful would be like a crossfade setting, although these pads that I'm going to link in the description below, they're by Carl Vercade, they're free. You can check them out, link in the description below. They kind of crossfade automatically. So crossfade isn't a necessity. These kind of fade out at the end of the track and then fade back in whenever they would repeat again. So I use those pads on this tablet by Carl Vercade, linked in the description below. And then from there, whenever I have those all loaded onto my tablet, I just create a playlist here. Let's see if you can see that. I create a playlist and I put all of my songs in the key that I want. So like if this is from this Sunday, I did a couple songs in the key of A, so I'll have pads in the key of A for the first song in the playlist, and then I did one in the key of E, so I had that in the next playlist, and then the key of D, and so on and so forth until I had all of my pads in the order that I needed them. And then I've just got them loaded up like this. I've got the first one set up to go, and then after I'm done with those first two songs in the key of A, all I do to get to the next one is just swipe over, and boom, now we're in the key of E. And then once that song's done, I'll like end the song on a guitar chord, let it ring out. As it's ringing out, I'll kind of bend down and swipe over to the next one. You could also have like a Bluetooth foot switch, I think would work pretty well. I don't use that, but it's something I've thought about before. I just can't justify spending like $30 or $50 or whatever it is for me whenever I could just bend down and flick to the next song. It works perfectly fine. So that's what I'm running on the tablet. You could do that on an iPod, an iPad, whatever, a laptop, whatever. Just have it set up that way. And then from there, I've got this headphone jack out, which is a 3.5 millimeter, to a 1/4 inch, which is an instrument cable. And I'll show you the next piece coming out of this into the volume pedal. From that tablet coming out of the headphone jack is the 3.5 millimeter, and then it goes into just a standard instrument cable here. I'll link the cable that I use down in the description below. That goes into the instrument slot of my volume pedal, which is like if you were playing a guitar, you would have the guitar signal coming through the volume pedal, but instead I have the pad coming through the volume pedal. And why do I have the volume pedal here instead of just going directly into a direct box? Well, that's because I want the ability to bring in the pad audio and bring it out. So whenever I'm playing, if I want the pad in, obviously I'll fade it in and then I'll fade it out, right? So that allows me to control it. You could have your sound guys do this back at the soundboard if you didn't want to be in charge of it. I like to be in charge of it because I usually know when I want it coming in and out. You could also give this setup to somebody else on your worship team if you didn't want to be the one running it. But like I said, I use this a lot whenever it's just me and an acoustic guitar and the sound guy isn't familiar with the worship set or whatever, so they don't know when to bring the pads in and out. So I just do it myself. It doesn't add that much stress on me, so I just do it. And So that's coming into the volume pedal, which allows you to swell the volume in and out. And then out of that is just another 1/4 inch instrument cable to a direct box. And that's the whole setup. So there it is. Just to recap again, super simple setup. Tablet, 3.5 millimeter going into the volume pedal. 1/4 inch coming out of the volume pedal over to a direct box. The direct box is a channel on your board. You can set the level, and then you can control when the pad comes in and out just by going like this. So there it is, my super simple pad setup for when I lead worship with just me and an acoustic guitar or maybe a small band. I'll give that setup to somebody else so they can control it. It's pretty simple to understand as well. I've had like a percussionist run this if they were playing cajon. I mean, you could do it on a drum set too. You could have the keyboardist run it. You could have the bass player run it. You could basically have anyone run it because it's that simple and it just sits on the floor in front of them. So like I said, check out the link in the description below. I'll have links to all of the equipment that I use. You can see it more in depth. You probably have all of it, so you don't need to get any of it. But on the off chance that you do, you can check out the links in the description below. And also, if you want to improve your worship leading, it's about more than just gear. You know, I don't talk about gear that much on this channel. This is like the one rare time that I've actually talked about gear. It's just something useful, so I thought I'd talk about it. But if you want to improve your worship leading, a great way to do it is to check out the free audio training that I put together called 5 Tips to Instantly Improve Your Worship Leading, where in that audio training, I think it's like 20-25 minutes long, I walk you through 5 things that aren't hard to do, but you just have to know them and implement them into your worship leading, and it will instantly improve your worship leading. So check out that in the description below as well. And other than that, until I see you in the next video, keep leading worship well.